eye-popping contract.
Hang on a second. I think I owe you some money from the last time we were here. So, no.
In addition to my guests offering their no-holds-barred opinions about Watson hiring, you, the viewers, also have a chance to participate via Zoom. Click on the link in the description that appears on your screen. Thank you, Dana, Ron, and Tony for taking the time to participate in this conversation. Eye-popping contract.
So, hang on a second. I think I owe you some money from the last time we were here. So, no.
In addition to my guests offering their no-holds-barred opinions about Watson hiring, you, the viewers, also have a...
All right, sorry, we're good to go.
Okay?
Really sorry.
So, let's start with this question. Did Jimmy and Dee Haslam, owners of the Cleveland Browns, make a deal with the devil in hiring Deshaun Watson to be the quarterback with such a lucrative contract? Dana, let's go with you.
Well, I don't know if they made a deal with the devil just yet. There's a lot of questions with this Bertram, and as Ron and Champ, have looked at this. There's just so many questions that are unanswered right now. I think in the age of the NFL, you want to win now. The Browns have not been very good since they came back. 2 playoff appearances since 1999. I think in the minds of Jimmy and Dee Haslam, they need to win now. And how do you win? Baker Mayfield's been there 4 years, took him to the playoffs 1 time. I think they feel that Deshaun Watson is the type of quarterback that can lead them to higher pastures, greener pastures. Does that mean a Super Bowl? It's too early to tell that. But I think it's a chance they took. They knew they were going to get beat up with it. And we'll know a year from now whether it was a good move or not, or 2 years from now, when Deshaun Watson has a year in the system, and gets ready for his second year. I think the big question for Browns fan is he's going to get suspended. How many games is he going to get suspended, and how's that going to affect the Browns, as they move forward? Civil charges are still a possibility. We know the criminal charges, but I think the story is far from being over because we just don't know. There's too many unanswered questions concerning his legal problems.
Ron?
I've said on my show for about a year that Baker Mayfield was not the choice of Browns general manager Andrew Berry. And anyone that's ever been in sports or just in business in general, when somebody comes in, they want to have their guy run the program. And Baker wasn't Andrew Berry's guy. Andrew Berry had no say in this draft pick in 2018. He was drafted by the previous general manager. And from what I understand, Jimmy and Dee Haslam were good with having Baker be the quarterback in 2022. It was Andrew Berry and Paul D. Podesta that convinced the Haslams, hey, we need to make a change here. We need to have our guy here. And essentially, Berry has basically said, my job is now on the line because I'm asking that you guys believe in my abilities as a general manager. Deshaun Watson's the guy. We want to have this guy. And he convinced Jimmy Haslam and Dee Haslam to make the trade, and they ultimately made the trade. Now, there's so many moving pieces. My Lord, Baker's still on this team. They haven't traded him yet. There's really no market for Baker Mayfield right now because nobody wants to pay $18.9 million for essentially a backup quarterback unless he goes to Seattle or Carolina, two teams that need a starting quarterback. But the problem is nobody wants to pay $18.9 million. The Browns are ultimately going to have to throw a draft pick in just to have someone take that contract or eat most of Baker's contract in order to get something decent back their way. So there's so many moving pieces. And then, like Dana said, we don't know if Watson's going to be suspended or not. I mean, look, I still believe, and our country believes, in a person that's innocent until proven guilty. He was found innocent in a court of law. Now, did he do it? Well, there's a lot of evidence that Deshaun is not the clean-cut person that the Haslams want everyone to think that he is, and want everyone to think that he is, and that maybe there is some stuff going on.
Tony, Deshaun is not a clean-cut person, and for you, a lifelong Raiders fan, with a team that had the worst reputation in football
And
for a long time. You should be comfortable with this hiring, right?
Well, I think that the issue here is that we know that throughout the NFL, especially recently, you have to have, we've heard the term championship quarterback. You need a championship quarterback to win the Super Bowl. And look what happened in the last 2 years. 2 years ago, Tom Brady left New England, went to Tampa Bay, they won the Super Bowl in the first year. Last year, Matt Stafford, who was in Detroit for 12 years, went to the Rams, came to the Super Bowl, won the Super Bowl. So the Browns want to win the Super Bowl. They haven't been to a Super Bowl yet since 1966. So they see an opportunity. There really wasn't anyone out there as an option besides Deshaun Watson. I mean, there's nobody. I mean, Jimmy G's still out there, Garoppolo from the 49ers, but that's the issue. NFL teams realize that you got to have a championship quarterback if you want to win a Super Bowl, and that's all that was left. And obviously, after 5 years or 4 years, they don't think the Browns' current organization does not think that Baker Mayfield is a championship quarterback, and I have a tendency to agree with him on that.
Okay, so let's talk. You guys are sports experts. So for the viewers, you talked about Brady, who seems to be in a class of his own, but yet you mentioned Deshaun Watson in the same breath. Is he that good?
Well,
Anybody?
Yeah, I think. Well, I'll go back to Clemson. I mean, he was in the national championship game 2 years in a row. They won one and lost one. But and he came to Houston. That wasn't really a great team he went to in Houston. It had some pretty good numbers. But when you compare him to Baker Mayfield, I think there's a big difference. I think he's a big-time quarterback. He's proven it. That's one thing about Baker. Baker really hasn't proven that he can win a big game in the pros. He's not a great two-minute quarterback. Very seldom do they rally. But Watson has the tools. He has the arm. He also has the ability to escape tacklers, something like Baker Mayfield can't because of the injuries. Sure, he's a much better quarterback than Baker Mayfield.
But I also think you have to have you have all the tools as the quarterback, but you need those tools in other areas. I mean, you mentioned Tom Brady. Rob Gronkowski went to Tampa. They won a Super Bowl. They signed Antonio Brown, who helped them, succeed. So you have to have the tools outside of having the quarterback. I don't know if the Browns have the tools. They had Landry. They had Odell Beckham. There was an issue. Beckham's now gone. Landry, you hope they could re-sign him. So are the tools that you need to succeed, are the Browns losing them? We're not sure yet. I mean, we're just not sure but I think that's a key part in all this is you have to have the tools to be successful. Roethlisberger had it in Pittsburgh when he won Super Bowls. He had Brown. He had Jerome Bettis. He had the tools. They had the defense. This is an offensive-minded league now. Everything's throwing the ball. Everything is, high-tempo offense and that sort of thing. I think the question is, in the Browns' minds, do they have the tools that Deshaun Watson needs to be successful? I think they're trying to get some of those tools, but I don't think they're where they need to be right now.
Ron?
To answer your question, Deshaun Watson is nowhere close to Tom Brady. Not even close. Not even remotely close.
And yet the contract that they signed, they offered him, would suggest that he's in a league of his own.
Well, you go and this
What,
go
290 is what, 290 million?
Who's that?
Deshaun Watson?
230.
230
million.
and every penny of it's guaranteed, which is unheard of in the National Football League.
So what are they seeing that you don't?
This goes back to what you talked about the last time we were here talking about the gamble. This is by far the biggest gamble that any team has ever taken. Because if you look at it, Deshaun Watson has been to the playoffs one time in his entire National Football League career. Now, he's played with a bad organization. The Houston Texans are a horrendous organization. And he has gone to the playoffs one time. He beat the Bills in a wild card game they had no business winning. Can you tell I'm a Bills fan? And then they went and got trounced by New England the next week. He's a nice quarterback. He's a very good quarterback. He's had very little talent around him offensively other than Hopkins, his wide receiver. I think in what Dana said, free agency's not done yet, and we still have the NFL draft, and the NFL draft is filled with really nice wide receivers. I'm hearing Landry's supposedly going to be coming back. There's room. There's a possibility that Beckham even comes back. He was saying something about coming back, although he's coming off major knee injury in the Super Bowl. So I think that Cleveland will have some talent around Watson, but there's so many questions, the biggest of which is he's going to be suspended. We know this. Is it going to be 6 games? Is it going to be 8 games? Who's going to be the quarterback while he's suspended? Are we looking at 2023, or are you guys, or is this organization, I should say, looking more into 2020? Or I'm sorry, is it 2022 we're looking at with this team taking off, or is it going to be in 2023 when Watson's no longer suspended and plays a full year? So honestly, in my personal opinion, I don't think the Browns are going to be all that great in 2022 because he's been suspended. And I think that the AFC is so loaded, and Watson will be suspended, I don't even think they make the postseason.
And so you mentioned the gamble they've taken, but not only that, the way they structured that contract, even if he's suspended, he loses very little money because his base pay is the one that will be affected, not the bonus.
And that's what's turned a lot of people in the National Football League against Cleveland and this ownership group. Number one, they did something that is completely taboo in the National Football League, and that's fully guaranteeing a contract. I don't think I've ever seen a contract fully guaranteed in the National Football League. In a league in which contracts should be guaranteed, none of them are because the union is just such a weak union. They've never been able to get this from management. So the idea that Cleveland is allowing this quarterback who has this many skeletons in his closet and has this many problems, you're giving him a completely guaranteed contract. And, oh, by the way, you're going to smack everyone in the face by saying, well, we're going to take most of his money away in year one because we know he's going to be suspended, so he doesn't lose that money.
I think they're desperate. I think they're in a desperate situation, the Browns. If you go back to, since they came back, they've been pathetic. I mean, they made the playoffs one time. They had the one win over Pittsburgh in the playoffs. But they see themselves, and back to Dana's point, the Browns 2 years ago, when they made the playoffs, they had a tremendous running game. Great offensive line. Their defense was top 10. And they made it to almost got Kansas City in one of the playoff games. So they still have that running game. They still have that decent defense. And I think that they're a desperate situation. And remember now, this is only not for this year. They've got him for, 4 more years after this year. So down the road, and plus he could probably attract better receivers maybe, especially if he continues to play well.
Does that desperation translate to the fans? Or is it desperation of the organization?
Well, I think it's a combination of both, to be quite honest. I mean, as Champ mentioned, the Browns have never been to a Super Bowl. I've always been told when the Cavaliers went to the NBA Finals, the city went wild.
Yeah.
If the Indians win a World Series, there'll be 3 billion people there. If the Browns ever win a Super Bowl, the city will go into Lake Erie. So are they desperate? I think it's a desperate front. I think Jimmy Haslam has come under the gun. I think this ownership has come under the gun. You know, Baker went through 3 head coaches, 3 offensive coordinators. I think it's I don't want to call it a panic mode, but I think the Haslams and this ownership group are thinking, hey, we got to make a strike, and we taking our chances on this guy because, as Champ mentioned, he's the only available quarterback who has the size. I mean, he's 6'3", Garoppolo's 6'1", so he has the size. But I think it's a desperate mode. And desperate may not be the right word, but I think Haslam knows he has to put a winner on the field to get the fans back. Not that the fans have left, but there is some, in our area, there's more.
What are you guys hearing from people you talk to all the time who are longtime Browns fans?
And I think the jury's still out. Some people say they hate it. Some people say, well, let's see what happens. And I've always under the contention, if Deshaun Watson leads this team to the AFC Championship and perhaps a Super Bowl, everybody forgets about his off-the-field problems.
Yes?
Oh, winning solves everything. It really does. Now, as I said on my show a lot of times, I feel bad for the people that have a problem with this. With this signing, I feel bad for the women fan base. And finally, someone asked in the press conference, "What do you say to the women fan base and to those who are just completely turned off by what Deshaun Watson may have done? What do you say to those people?" And there have already been people that have said, "We're not gonna renew our season tickets. I can't support a team that has this caliber of a person leading the team." So it's been a lightning rod in a lot of ways. But I'll go back to what our country has stood for since day one. You are innocent until you are proven guilty. Now, that doesn't mean Deshaun Watson is innocent just because the court threw out 2 cases. I mean, let's not forget O.J. Simpson was found innocent of double murder, and I think 99.99% of the people in this country would believe that O.J. Simpson committed the murder. I think that Deshaun Watson has some skeletons in his closet. I think that the more I'm hearing about this, the more I'm a little troubled about this kid and what the Cleveland Browns may have gotten themselves into.
Okay, Tony. So, should we as a society apply the same moral standards that apply to people who live in civil society to professional sports and professional athletes, given the numerous examples of misbehavior? He's not the first person, and he won't be the last.
Nope.
And so, are sort of some sports commentators making too much of the fact of his, the alleged crimes, and not just saying, in the end, this is entertainment, and he's going to be a great entertainer for Cleveland, for Ohio, for Northeast Ohio. So, so what if he's got skeletons in his closet?
Well, I think it's a microcosm of society. I mean, look at all the actors over the years that have done nasty things, but we still watch them. We still love them as actors. They're entertainers. I mean, we could go bankers, lawyers, whatever. I mean, look at the situation in the NFL right now where you have the Washington football team, which are the Commanders now. They have a whole email controversy, and they refuse to make it public. Right now, the Cowboys are under investigation for some voyeurism involving cheerleaders. So if it's from the top's not following the rules or breaking rules, but it happens throughout society. And once again, these are entertainers. People pay big time money to watch these players, and through the TV contracts, mainly where that's where the money comes right now. But that's what they are. They're entertainers, and we have a tendency to look past like actors and singers and performers. We give them a free pass. Why not athletes?
And this is a job for them. I mean, this is a job, and I think that's where you kind of have to separate it. Deshaun Watson plays for the Cleveland Browns, or is a member of the Cleveland Browns. He did something wrong. The league's going to suspend him. That's his penalty. So it's a job. I mean, we would all face that penalty, that some sort of penalty, if we did something wrong in our place of employment.
Well, as I recall, when Baker Mayfield was hired, and there were many people who, literally and figuratively, saw him as the great white hope for the Browns. Okay, and there was some talent there. I mean, he wasn't a bum. I mean, he knew football. What happened to him? Why did he implode the way he did? And will the Deshaun Watson pressure, if this thing continues and he's being forced to testify, and other women are going to come forward, and he's being forced to now talk about previous involvement he had with women. I mean, this thing, it's like, a slow death, so death by a thousand cuts. So what happened to Baker, and could the same thing happen to Deshaun Watson?
I think what happened to Baker is the league caught up to him, to be quite honest. I mean,
What
he
does
was
that
a
mean?
rookie. Well, the league caught up to him. They got to know his tendencies after a while. I mean, it almost appeared like the Bengals, the Ravens, and the Steelers knew exactly what was coming because his tendencies didn't change. We talked about this earlier. The biggest problem watching the Cleveland Browns is when Baker Mayfield had passes batted down. And there was probably 3-4 a game because he was too short.
How tall is he?
5'11".
Yeah.
Okay. So that was, that's something that you just can't correct.
How tall do you have to be these days to
Well-
play in the NFL?
Well, most of the good quarterbacks, believe it or not, are 6'4", 6'5" now. In fact, Josh Allen is almost like the new quarterback right now, right? How tall is he?
He's about 6'5".
Yeah.
But I think the league caught up to him. They got to know his tendencies. They said, if you didn't roll out of the pocket, throw our hands up, we'll bat a pass down.
I think he also believed the hype, though, too.
Yeah.
I think he believed his own hype.
Did he?
Look, I mean, his first year, he comes in on a Monday night against the New York Jets. The stadium's rocking. I was there. It was phenomenal. I mean, the guy leads the Browns to the victory. Everyone goes bananas. The winless streak ends, and everyone wants to crown this kid the king. Well, in sports, it's a funny thing. You don't crown someone a king after one performance. I've always said you can't even crown a person after 1 year. Talk to me when a person has 2 back-to-back solid years, and then I'll start crowning him. Until then, I don't want to hear it.
But were you impressed with his performance?
Oh, I was impressed with his performance, but again, he has limitations, like Dana said. He's woefully inaccurate in some ways. He's got an average arm. It's nothing spectacular. Yeah, I mean he'll throw a deep ball every now and then. He's too inconsistent.
But I think Baker came to Cleveland with, and I don't want to call it a black eye, but everybody wasn't really happy with Baker. Because remember, when he played at Oklahoma, he beat Ohio State. What did he do?
Yeah.
I loved it. He put the flag right. Yeah, planted the flag. I enjoyed that.
And I think, some people got turned off by that. And I think, when he got drafted by the Browns, they're thinking, we're getting this guy who planted, the Oklahoma flag. I mean, fans are funny that way.
Yeah, and I think with Baker, too, if you look throughout his history, I mean, he had some decent numbers in high school, really good numbers, but he wasn't heavily recruited. He walked on to Texas Tech and won the job as a freshman, which had never been done before, starting quarterback as a freshman walk-on. And then after 1 year, he had a great year, and he said, I'm leaving. I got problems with the coaching staff. He goes to Oklahoma.
Oh, hold a minute. This is a college student?
Yes, this is
a college kid.
He walked on to Texas Tech, won the job, played all year, and then after the season was over, he says, I'm leaving. I'm going to transfer. He transfers to Oklahoma, but doesn't tell anyone at Oklahoma. He's there a month, and finally they find out he's there, so they found Stoops comes out, the coach of Oklahoma says, you know what, he's going to try out as a walk-on. He tried out and won the job again. He walked on 2 universities and won the job twice. But see, he's likes that underdog role. But when he became the #1 pick in the entire draft, he's not the underdog anymore. He might have been better off to be drafted in the 4th round.
Why was he the #1 pick?
Well, that's a good question because you look back on that draft now, and to me, I always thought his statistics problem were he was 6 foot, 200 pounds. And there's very few NFL quarterbacks that size. Drew Brees, Russell Wilson. But Baker, for whatever reason, doesn't slide. I mean, he was like challenging. When he hurt his shoulder, he was trying to make a tackle. Some of the decisions he makes, they questioned. And that comment that came out that they wanted to get more of an adult as quarterback, we don't know where it came from, but I think that's what they were talking about, his decision making. And he's a quarterback that plays like a middle linebacker mentality. And in the pros, you can't act like that. You got to be calm.
There's a big difference between college and the pros. I talked to a lot of guys, local guys who played major college football and then have gone to the NFL, and they says it's night and day. It's completely different. And I think Champ is right, where I think Baker said, okay, I'm the #1 guy, I get this pressure on me, I have to prove myself to these people, and it cost him. I mean, it cost him with the injuries, it cost him with, the 3 offensive coordinators who came in. I mean, I just think that, and then he, when Hugh Jackson, took the job at Cincinnati,
he was rude to him. Remember, he was rude to him?
Hugh Jackson and kind of waved him off a little bit. So I think there was a lot of fuss.
Was none of this known prior to him?
I don't know if it was known or not. I had a couple of dealings with him. I mean, he seems like an interesting guy, but he's no Bernie Kosar. No, God, no. He's not. You can't even compare the two.
Yeah, but Aaron Rodgers has a weird personality, but he wins.
It'd
be different if Baker was winning.
And Rodgers has talent.
Yes,
an
he has
abundance of talent.
Right.
Not to say that Baker doesn't, but I think once Mayfield is either traded or released, a lot of people are going to find out just how well not well liked he was in that locker room. He was not a popular person in that locker room in any way, shape, or form. And I think once he leaves, those stories are going to come out. And it might surprise some folks to know just how fractured that locker room really was.
And I'm sure everybody knows that Tony is married to Beth Kosar, Bernie's sister. And Bernie had a very good reputation, not only with the players and the way he dealt with them, but with the press. I mean, he was the most pleasant person. Even when they lost, you'd go into and Chuck Parrish, our sports editor of the Vindicator for a long, long time. He was a great Bernie Kosar supporter from the very beginning when Bernie was at Boardman, and Chuck did a lot to help him along. So when Bernie went to Cleveland, Chuck Parrish used to go to cover the games and go into the locker room after the games, and all of the media was there, all the big papers and all of that. And Bernie would look at Chuck for the first question and say, Chuck, ask your question. Here's a sports editor from the Vindicator in Youngstown. But Bernie never forgot his roots. Is that important in professional football or professional sports to have that kind of a mentality, or does arrogance win out in the end?
Well, I think part of it, Bertram, is social media. Baker was on social media. His wife was on social media. And I think that's a mistake.
Yeah.
Any professional athlete, I mean, with all due respect, probably shouldn't be on social media. We saw Antonio Brown in the Steelers locker room, Facebooking Live or, this stuff. I mean, that's, when Bernie was playing, that was unheard of.
Right.
So I think, social media has played a big part in pro athletes. And
The other part of it, look, the Cleveland media, and I won't name any names, but some members of the Cleveland media have not been kind to Baker Mayfield from the beginning.
Yes.
And I think that set a precedence as well.
Why?
I think it set a precedence of there was always going to be some animosity between Mayfield and members of the press. And like I said, I went up and covered the Browns a few times during his time, and you can tell that there was some tension when certain people asked questions, because Baker's one of those guys that he just does not forget, nor does he forgive anyone that wrongs him. That might be a blessing for him, but I think it's also a curse. There's a lot of immaturity with that kid. He hasn't grown up yet, and until he grows up, I don't think that there are teams in the National Football League that are going to take a chance on him per se, because he's perceived as a loose cannon. And you can have all the talent in the world, but if you're a loose cannon and you're not as talented as most of the quarterbacks in the league, you're not going to go anywhere.
Okay, before we move on, Andy and Robert McFerrin, our producer, and the Kunkel, our technical director, we've got some viewers standing by. Should we put them on? And
Yeah, let's give it a shot. Alexander.
are we?
Yeah, we're gonna go with our first one. All right, Alexander, you hear us?
Yeah, hey guys, thanks for taking my call, I guess.
And thanks for participating.
30-year Bills fan here, so I'm neutral on the whole subject, but I gotta tell you, I look at a guy who went 4-12 in his last season with Texans, sat out last year, and you put him into a situation with a team that's notorious for inconsistencies. That doesn't spell a recipe for success for me.
You?
I tend to agree with what you're saying. I mean, I think he stepped out for the year for a couple of reasons. I don't think he wanted to be suspended with the Texans, and I don't think he wanted to play with the Texans anymore. That's kind of a red flag as well, because when I look at wanting to acquire a quarterback, and again, by the way, I'm also a big Bills fan, so you and I share the same team. When I want a quarterback, I'm going to look at someone like a Josh Allen long before I look at someone who gave up on his team, gave up on his teammates. I tend to agree with what you're saying.
I will say this too about your comment there, and is that he had a 28-25 record at Houston. He threw for 14,000 yards. He's a Pro Bowler for 3 years, had 104 touchdowns and 36 interceptions. And I remember the same comments were made about Matt Stafford. Well, he's never won a playoff game. He's a loser. He can't come. I mean, and guess what he did? I think that you can't look at the Houston situation and make a conclusion, because remember, Houston's also had to trade away a receiver, a very talented receiver, because they just didn't want to play there anymore. It's not really a very well-respected organization in terms of the players and the owner right now. They got a lot of issues, and he just didn't want to play. He sat out the whole year. He didn't want to play. He was still getting paid. And I think so that's why you can't judge what they did at Houston. Same way you can't look at Stafford's record in Detroit, because he's a much better quarterback because he got with a better team. And I think that Cleveland has a better roster overall right now than Houston.
Yeah, but Stafford didn't sit out with Detroit.
No, right.
Yeah, that's the thing that bothers me, is the fact that Watson said, "Screw you guys, I'm sitting out. I don't want to play."
Right, he may do that with Cleveland. Who knows? He may do the same thing with Cleveland.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, it was a bad situation in Houston.
It was.
And I think he said, look, I have a chance to go somewhere else. I'm going to sit out the year. I have enough money or whatever, not knowing he was going to get $230 million guaranteed. I agree. I think the Cleveland situation is a little bit better, but Deshaun brings a lot of baggage with him. And again, you just have to sort through that baggage. But again, if you get Landry back, I think the Browns' defense is good. They'll probably be a little bit better. You get Landry back, you get some of these receivers, you get a receiver in the draft, their offensive line, they brought some guys, signed some guys. So you would think on paper the Browns would be pretty good and Watson would fit right into that.
Well, thank you for joining us. Let's go to the next. Do we have somebody else online? Anyone else?
We have Crystal.
Crystal, are you there?
We're just trying to mute them or unmute them.
No? So while we wait for Crystal, Baker's still with the Browns.
Yep.
He still has a contract that if he were to move, another team would have to pick up. And so far, there aren't any other teams that want to pick him up, right?
Exactly.
Now there isn't.
So what happens to him?
Well, and again, we may not see nothing. I mean, there's some talk the Seahawks may be interested, but the Browns would have to throw in a draft pick. I saw something today, Baker in a second-round draft pick for wide receiver DK Metcalf, which would be, I think, a great move for the Browns. I think, and again, my opinion, I think some of these owners have said to Jimmy Haslam, saying, look, you guys paying this guy $230 million guaranteed. Now you're setting the bar high for us. So, we're not going to do anything now, so you have to pay both these guys. Haslam's not going to have to pay both these guys. When training camp comes, someone's going to get injured. If Baker's still with the Browns, they'll make a deal and Baker will be gone. The interesting part will be, will Baker come to Browns training camp?
Yeah.
Now, I don't think he'll go to the OTAs, the voluntary OTAs, but will he come to training camp? I think that's the question. Right now, we're just not sure of.
Well, if he doesn't, then he doesn't get his money. That's the only way he doesn't get his money. This $18.9 million is not guaranteed, because if he doesn't show up, the Browns will say you're in violation of your contract. We're not paying you. So the Browns are in an interesting situation. If nobody else wants Baker Mayfield, and I have a strange feeling the other 31 owners are kind of colluding together and saying, we're not going to take Mayfield off your hands unless it's a deal that we really, really can get behind. We're not helping you guys anytime soon because you have given a quarterback a completely guaranteed contract, something that is unheard of in the National Football League. So we're not going to give you any favors. So let's say that Cleveland doesn't make a trade for Deshaun Watson, and this goes all the way into summer camp. Well, now Baker Mayfield has been backed into a corner. He has to show up at Browns camp in order to get paid. If the Cleveland Browns, let's take it a step further. If the Cleveland Browns see that Watson has been suspended, and Mayfield is still on the team, and the season begins, and Baker Mayfield is the starting quarterback because he's the best quarterback available now that Watson's been suspended.
We'll never see that.
No,
I don't think we will.
We'll never see that.
I don't think we will, but that would be interesting.
Is he mature enough, if Watson was suspended, and coach goes to Baker and says, you're still on our team, you're going to start, and we want you to play your best. Can we expect the best from him or not?
I don't think that's an option. More I read now is they pretty much come out, the head coach of the Browns say that Jacoby Brissett is our guy.
Yeah.
And I think they can hold on to him as long as they want because you know what? The Browns are desperate to get Watson, but I'll give an example. What if the Raiders lose Derek Carr in preseason, out for the year? You don't think that they might be desperate enough to go for that $18 million? I mean, that's what can still happen. That's why this could go a long time, but I don't see him ever playing with the Browns ever again.
Usually, Bertram, every general manager, every owner, every coach will tell you, you make trades to make yourself better. And I don't know if this is necessarily the case for the Browns if they trade Baker Mayfield.
Is there such a shortage of good quarterbacks?
Oh, yeah.
NFL caliber quarterbacks.
Why?
There is.
Why?
They're just
I
hard.
mean, don't they start in high school? Don't they start in
Well,
Pee-wee?
you know, sometimes you look at a quarterback in high school and you say, you know what, this young man has a chance. Okay, in our area, I mean, the last NFL player that we had was Lynn Bowden. You know, who you knew in high school was a young man who could go to not only the collegiate level but the pro level, just because he was a man amongst boys.
Plus, look at the. You got to be 6'4", 6'5". You got to be able to run. You got to be able to think quickly. I mean, the quarterback position is so much harder than it used to be. I think that, and there's not a lot of guys out there that are 6'4", 6'5". They're coming up through the ranks. I mean, and if you look at the base, we talk about the Cleveland Browns base. Go to Columbus right now. They're upset more than anything because there's a lot of Bengal fans there, and the Bengals were in last place. All of a sudden,
Right.
the Bengals went to the Super Bowl, and they got Joe Burrows, and we still have Baker Mayfield. So they're not. I mean, that's why a lot of Browns fans are happy to get rid of Baker Mayfield because, and especially in Columbus, because of all the Cincinnati Bengal fans now. They're better than the Browns. In 1 year, they went to the Super Bowl.
And then you have the other faction of Baker Mayfield supporters, and their argument is a legitimate one. I mean, if you think about it, their argument's legitimate. The Browns were 0-16, 1-15. They bring in Baker Mayfield. Boom, they win 7 games. Second year, kind of a yeah. Third year, they go to second year, they go to the playoffs. They lose to Kansas City. They take a step backwards in year 3, year 4. Mayfield's shoulders all screwed up, his non-throwing shoulder. Now, I've said from the get-go, if I were the Browns GM, I would have given Baker one final shot at a 5th year because the 4th year with the screwed up shoulder, I think that should have been a gimme year. That should have been a mulligan year. And okay, you have this last year. Go out. Let's see what you got. Now, obviously, the Browns wanted an upgrade at their quarterback position, and they got one. And Watson.
And that's exactly, a viewer sent in this comment, a question. Baker played injured most of the season. Now, how much did that affect his 2021 performance?
I think it affected it a great deal. I mean, try throwing the ball when you have a harness on your shoulder and I mean, a lot of his passes were incomplete and they were terrible passes, and I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that his shoulder was banged up. Now, my argument to all of this is, why did the front office continue to put Baker Mayfield out there? Why didn't they sit back and say, you're hurt, we have a quarterback who, by the way, led the Minnesota Vikings to an NFC championship game not too long ago. This guy's more than capable of coming in. You get your surgery, come back later in the season, and we'll be in pretty good shape.
Wasn't it he who wanted to play? Didn't he make the demand?
I think it was stubbornness too. I mean, look, Baker knows that in the first 3 years that he didn't meet the expectations of the organization, didn't meet the expectations of the fans. So now he gets hurt in game 2. He's in his 4th year saying, you know what, I got to do something here so I could prove that I'm the quarterback for the future. So instead of, sometimes you hurt the team more when you're injured. And I'm not saying, we'll never know if the Browns would have won games when Baker was playing that they lost. But I think he hurt the team because he was injured, because it was stubbornness.
I'm sorry, just a minute. Let me tell the viewers, if you want to participate with us, you have got to mute your mic in order for us to. Oh, I'm sorry. So you unmute your mic after you've muted it, in order for us to hear you, because we've got people who want to join us, but they can't be heard. So unmute your mic. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, but I just think sometimes it was the stubbornness. I think Baker kind of in his mind says, look, I got to prove myself in year 4 so I could get that extension, and it backfired on him.
But if the Browns really thought that he was going to be their guy, they would have signed him to an extension already, and number 2, they wouldn't have played him this year. I just wonder if they threw him out there thinking, well, he's not our guy, we're just going to throw him out there.
And look for some takers.
Well, because if he was their guy, they wouldn't have played him, and they would have got him an extension 2 years ago.
See, now that's what I was told late in the season, that the front office did this. That the front office said, we're just going to let Baker Mayfield play because we're not interested in him being the long-term answer. And I think that was about the time Andrew Berry was telling the Browns owner, Jimmy Haslam, look, you've got me as a general manager. You got to allow me to take my quarterback, the guy that I want, just like you did with the previous general manager taking Baker Mayfield. You got to give me the opportunity to take my guy. And Andrew Berry convinced the Haslams to make this trade. Make no mistake about this. Andrew Berry's neck is on the line.
Right.
He will be fired if this doesn't work. The whole organization, I would assume that Berry, De Podesta, and anyone else that was wanting this is going to lose their job if it doesn't turn out.
But it won't be because Deshaun Watson, if the sins that he's accused of committing have been proven, and he is suspended, they won't be fired for that. They'll be fired for his performance.
They'll be fired for his
Okay,
performance.
so really,
And it really
this
comes
whole
down to-
issue doesn't really matter then in the end.
It comes down to wins and losses. I mean, it's a game where wins counts and losses don't. I mean, so we've seen it with coaches. We've seen the Browns go through how many coaches over the last 20 years?
We've got the viewer, Alexander, who had previously called in. I think he wants to add something. Go ahead, Alexander.
Oh, well, I would just say, yeah, we better hope he works out. I mean, the other side of that is with Baker playing injured, you know, we can say he's stubborn and he's got that competitive spirit, which is good and bad, but Stefanski's still the head coach. I mean, can the head coach not tell the player, no, you're going to sit down, especially when we had our backup, who's not with the Bills again, sorry to reference him, but who was good enough to go to the Bills, who was stepping in and winning games.
Well, I think, too, you know, you got to believe your player. If the player says, hey, I could play, the coach is going to say, okay, you could play. You know,
Is it that easy, or does the medical staff have to weigh in?
Well, the medical staff said that he was good enough to play. So,
if the medical staff
But-
says you're good to play and you say you're
But
good
if
to
you
play.
watch that game, I mean, you could tell he wasn't 100%.
oh, I agree with you wholeheartedly. Look, if it were me, and again, I don't know if it's just Cleveland or do other organizations do this, but championship organizations don't listen to their player. The management makes the decisions. And unfortunately, Cleveland's not in that position. They allowed a player to make that decision. If I was Stefanski, I'd have said, you're not going to play. You aren't helping this team in any way, shape, or form. Go get the surgery. We'll see you in the week 15, week 16. We're going to play our backup quarterback. You get healthy, because the only way we're going to win is if you're healthy.
And maybe Baker thought if that happened, he would lose his starting job.
Right.
That could be too.
You know, another incident that happened to Bertram that we haven't mentioned is that during the season, I think it was near the end of the season, the dad of Odell Beckham released a tape saying that Baker's not throwing in the ball.
Yeah.
And at the time, we didn't think, you know, okay, whatever. But then Beckham goes to the Rams and has pretty good games, including the first part of that Super Bowl where he got hurt, or the game before. So that didn't help him at all, because that told everyone that he doesn't want to throw to Odell Beckham.
And not only that, I recall one game where Baker went to the sidelines and was really frustrated and was trying to talk to players, and they walked away from him. And then another game where I saw Brady go to the sidelines, and he was talking to some players, and you could see fear in their eyes. And I said, that's the difference between these two quarterbacks.
And what you just said, what I said earlier, when Baker Mayfield, when he's traded, when he's released, you will hear some stories come out, and I promise you, they're not going to make Baker Mayfield a very nice person. He was not well liked in that locker room. I can promise you that.
Austin Hooper already said it, I think.
Yeah. Well, look at you watch the games, and he's always by himself.
Yeah.
Other quarterbacks are talking to the coach. He was walking around by himself like he had a body odor or something. I mean, that should tell you, a quarterback needs to be a leader, and he failed miserably as a leader, as far as I'm concerned, in this situation.
Alexander, anything else? Are you still with us? He's gone?
Actually, we just need to have him unmute.
Unmute. He has to unmute.
Oh.
Unmute your mics.
Yeah, that's, this is high tech stuff. It was easier. It was easier being a print journalist. I'll tell you that. I want to read you something about, and I'm trying to find it.
He is back.
Oh, he is? Okay, you're back.
Oh, sorry,
with us,
gentlemen. Yeah, I had to get some permissions to unmute. No,
Oh, okay.
I think you covered it pretty well, but
Okay.
yeah, it's a tough situation.
Well, I appreciate
Thank
you,
you.
appreciate you joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let me read you something. And I heard this, and I think it was somewhere on cable. There was a discussion. Do you remember a player by the name of Jordan Cameron?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's the headline: Jordan Cameron, : a lot of us in the NFL don't love football. Former Browns and Dolphins tight end Jordan Cameron retired from the NFL at age 28 last week after suffering his 4th concussion of his career last season. He doesn't sound like he'll miss it. Cameron said that contrary to what some fans might think, he and his fellow NFL players don't necessarily love the game. Quote, I don't think a lot of these guys love football, to be honest. Quote, a lot of them don't. You play for other reasons, and every guy has their own reason. They know why, and as long as why is really important, you keep playing without really loving football. Because really, who loves to be hit in 10-degree weather by a 280-pound person? Really, no one loves that. Do you love football? I couldn't stand it when people asked me that. Do you know what struck me about this is that here are these zillionaires playing this game, okay? I call them zillionaires. And a family, a father wants to take his kids and his wife for a Sunday out and pays $200 or $300, whatever the tickets are, and you go to concession, you have to buy food and stuff like that and all of that. And you hope that the people on the field are giving their all. You hope that they understand that the people in the stands most of those people will never make this kind of money in their lifetimes. You know, how many people you know are going to be able to make $230 million in 4 years? So this disturbed me when I heard this. You guys have been in sports a long time. Do you buy this?
No, I don't. First of all, how many concussions did he have?
4.
Maybe he's the concussions talking. And first of all, I think NFL, it's a brutal sport, let's be honest, compared to the other sports. And I think you got to be crazy to play the game because of the violence of the game. But these players, these linemen, when they're fit, their average lifespan for a lineman is 50 years old. I mean, we don't even know about all what these players have suffered through concussions and knee injuries or whatever. They give it all, and the other sports don't even come close to that. I think that football, the guys that play, most of them have a passion to play the game. Otherwise, I'd be afraid to play the game. I'm surprised George Plimpton even tried it, basically. But
right.
I don't believe that a lot of them aren't passionate about there, because in football, if you're not passionate, you're going to get really beat up. And these linemen and these receivers, I mean, they go across the middle. I mean, that's the one part of the game that, as I get older, I don't like to see these hits over the middle. And you think, oh my God, something's going to happen bad one time. But I don't believe that. I could maybe say that about other sports, but not football. I mean, these guys they have a passion for the game.
I think the mentality of rookies or men who are able to play this game is, let me play 6-7 years, let me get my pension or whatever that is after 7 years, get 2 contracts, and then call it quits. I think that's the mentality they have. They make good money, and they could live off the rest of that. They get a pension from the NFL after 7 years now.
Yeah.
So give me 2 contracts, give me that rookie contract, give me another contract, and then I'm done. And I think over the past couple of years, we've seen a lot of players, get away from the game at a young age.
But that contract is money. That's what we're talking
Sure,
about.
sure.
It's not love and affection and adulation. It's pure and simple money. So you have these players who are making a lot of money, who maybe have 4 or 5 years of a career, and then they want to say, we're out of here, so we're going to make as much as we can. And we're going to try and protect our bodies as much as we can, or no? Is that being too harsh?
Well, I don't see anything wrong with what he said. He didn't say, I'm not going to give my best effort. He just said, I don't particularly care for this game all that much. I'm playing the game strictly for the money.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I wouldn't do that. There's not enough money in this world for me to get destroyed like that if I didn't like the game. It just, but that's the way I was built. So, I mean, are there a lot of guys in the NFL that genuinely don't like football? I don't know. I would have to say that every single one of them try their hardest because they understand that if they don't, they're not going to get paid the money that they're supposed to be getting paid, number one. And number two, you'll get absolutely destroyed in this game if you're not at 100% or not trying 100%. You'll get destroyed in this game. So I don't think that every single person loves the game, but I don't think that there's a single person in the National Football League that doesn't understand that in order for me to get paid, I have to give my whole 100% effort.
And I think over the last 10 years, Bertram, the league has done a great job of trying to make the game safer. Yeah. They've taken away a couple of things, not chop blocks, but hitting a guy high and low. I think defensively they've done some things. So they've tried to make the game safer.
Kickoffs, they're trying to eliminate kickoffs more and more.
Eliminate kickoffs, and that sort of thing. And so I think they've done a good job from that standpoint of keeping the longevity of players playing. I mean, ask Tom Brady if he loves the game. I mean, he retired, came back, 46 years old. I mean, he loves the game.
But cynically, you have to. He came back. We don't exactly know what the incentive is and what is his new contract. He might be an owner of the team for all we know.
He very well may be.
Right, but if Tom Brady has broken knees and a back problem and can't think straight, I don't think he's going to love the game as much. I think a lot of these negative comments are from players that have been permanently disabled from this game.
But like in Tom Brady's situation, I mean he's had a couple of but nothing really catastrophic.
No, right.
Yeah.
So he's kept healthy, and part of that is because of the supporting cast that he's had.
And also the way he lives his life and all
Plus
the
quick
stuff
release.
that he
He has a
does
quick
and his
release. He really
diet.
does.
We got one of the viewers says, as much as I defended Baker Mayfield, he agrees with your opinions. Hindsight is 2020. Too many signs that Baker didn't get along with players, teammates that ignored him. And that's exactly what you guys have said, is that as a quarterback, I guess it's up to you to set the tone among the players in the dressing room, and sort of
well,
be
you're the leader.
cheerleader.
You're the leader.
Right.
I mean, you're the guy. I mean, the quarterback is the most talked about position, so you are the face of the franchise. And when you have dissension within the locker room, I mean, that's going to show. And look, the media in Cleveland does a great job. Where there's smoke, there's fire. They said Stefanski and Mayfield didn't get along. Okay, they asked Stefanski that, in the middle of the season. He says, "Yeah, we get along." So,
They had to have a meeting.
You got to keep those distractions away,
Right.
especially during the season.
I'll use one example of my team. Last year, the Raiders, John Gruden got fired, and he should have got fired. And then they lost like 2 or 3 in a row. And then they had the horrible situation where the receiver was going at a high rate of speed, killed an innocent woman and a dog.
Right.
And you know what? Their quarterback was the leader in that locker room throughout the whole thing. Guided that team to the playoffs. I don't know how many quarterbacks could have done that. But he assumed the role of the leader because he was the quarterback. And every day he would check with the players. You okay? You okay? I mean, they went through a lot of problems. And they still made the playoffs. And all that credit goes to Derek Carr because he's a true leader.
And so in that regard, when you all were discussing Deshaun Watson with the Texans and he refusing to play, that is not an encouraging sign, is it?
You're right. You're absolutely right. That it isn't. And that's yet another gamble that the Browns have taken. Oh, this guy is incredibly talented, and he's a massive upgrade over Baker Mayfield. There's no two ways about it. My fear is, though he may be far more talented than Baker Mayfield, my fear is he is not as mature a quarterback as what the organization is looking for. And he may very well be a more talented version of Baker Mayfield in terms of immaturity.
Look, I think Andrew Berry is brilliant. He went to Yale, I think. I mean, is brilliant. I gotta believe when they met with Deshaun Watson in Houston, whether Barry was there, De Potesta was there, Haslam's were there, Kevin Stefanski was there, that they asked him all the questions we're asking. You know, you sat out the year, why'd you sit out the year? I mean, I have to assume they asked those questions. So they have to feel pretty good of the responses, because I can't see, and I trust Andrew Barry. I think Andrew Barry is probably the smartest person in the organization. Besides, I mean, I'll take Stefanski out because he's the coach. But Andrew Barry, I believe in what he says. And I'm sure they vetted, they talked to people, they had their own investigation company talk to people and everything. So the interesting part to all this is when Barry or Stefanski said back in October, we were looking at this. You know, that was in the middle of the season. So did they already quit on Baker?
I think so. Well, also keep in mind too that the night before, Watson said, no, I'm not going to the Browns. Then all of a sudden, guaranteed money came up, and guess what? Now he's with the Browns. So, and then they were able to work out that $1 million contract the first year for the suspension thing. So they did some financial, and that's the owner. That's where the owner came in.
And again, I think that comes back to Champ, where Jimmy Haslam feels the pressure to win and win now. And the only way he's going to do that is bringing in people who he thinks can win.
And do you think that female fans who have been offended by this hiring would come around if the Browns start winning and all of a sudden they're making headlines, or is this something more?
Winning solves all problems.
Well, I'm not a female, so I can't answer that.
Well, I mean,
what does your wife say? What does Beth, who used to be a sports writer, by the way,
right,
so you
right.
know.
Well, right, but she's she's involved with football. Okay, so she's got that connection. But yeah, I don't know if I could. I don't know. I can't say how they feel because I have no idea how they would feel.
There's too many unanswered questions, though, I think, right now to answer that, because we just don't know what's going to happen. What are, you know, the judge ruled that the 18 women who are supporting him now have to talk.
Right.
So what are they going to say? So I think once everything's out in the open, then we can make a very honest opinion. But I'll say what I said earlier and what Ron said. Winning solves everything. If the Browns go to the Super Bowl, you know, they're going to say Baker who and these 22 who, and go from there.
Yep. The hour is complete, and I know of the four of us, Dana's the only one who's working, so we do want to take time. But I do have one question, and this is, in the NCAA basketball finals, you had a tiny little school, Catholic school, called St. Peter's, whose athletic budget is something like $75 million, and yet did so well, with no fanfare, and yet you have bigger schools with huge budgets not being. What's going on? Is it parity? Is it good students going to, good players going to even small schools? Is this? Explain St. Peter's.
Honestly, I think the team got hot at the right time, and a lot of crazy things happened. It was a great story.
Yeah,
it really was. Honestly, I wish that story, take out St. Peter, put in YSU, because it's essentially the same thing. YSU is actually a bigger school than St. Peter's is. So,
but can YSU do this?
I think they're a ways away from doing it, but
Why?
but I think that they could. I think that there is a possibility that they could get into the NCAA tournament. And I've said this for years. With all due respect to what our football program has done, if YSU's men's basketball team ever made it to the NCAA basketball tournament, it would be the single greatest accomplishment in men's sports in the history of Youngstown State.
Even over Jim Tressel's
Absolutely.
Winning ways?
Absolutely.
Why?
Because it's big boy basketball. Now, with all due respect to Youngstown State, the FCS is not, and it's not their fault.
Right.
It's not their fault. It's split. Division I is split, where in basketball, it's not split. So if Youngstown State were to get into the NCAA basketball tournament and we're all gathered together on a Sunday to see who Youngstown State plays, this place would go bananas for about 3 or 4 days. I long to see that. I hope that Coach Calhoun is the guy in charge when this happens. I think it can happen. It's just I hope and pray that it does.
In 1985, they were seconds away from going to the tournament, the NCAA tournament. They lost in the championship game. You got to keep in mind the FCS national championship game is let's call it AAA for whatever purpose.
Yeah.
This is the big boys. This is Division I basketball. It's the NCAA tournament. Only 68 teams from across the country get in. If you're one of those 68 teams, you're in it. Bertram, when Butler went to, and Butler was in the same conference as YSU when they went to the NCAA finals 2 years in a row.
Right.
Oh.
YSU, to my understanding, got more money from Butler going to the finals than they did for the 4 national championship games.
And let me just add something
Please
too.
do.
1985 is when they started going 16 seeds, 1 versus 16, 2 or 3. Well, they've been 148 contested 1 versus 16. It's 1 win for the 16 and 147 wins. Okay, now the 15 seeds a little better, 10. Only 10 15 seeds have won, but they're the first 15 seed to advance to the Elite 8. But it's in their conference, they're the poorest school in the conference. And I was looking at this stat here that St. Peter's spent $130 million less on athletics than Kentucky did last year. And Kentucky made $11 million on basketball program. St. Peter's made nothing. And already they've lost their coach who was making $260,000. Now he's getting paid $2.4 million at Seton Hall. And 3 of their players
transferred out.
So they had a shining moment, but we will never hear from them ever again.
And I think a lot of people root for the underdog. They like to see those upsets. And to be quite honest, I think this is the first year we didn't have a buzzer beater in the tournament. There was no so St. Peter's kind of became the darlings for everybody. They beat Kentucky, and they would say, okay, now they played whoever afterwards.
Murray State.
Purdue, they beat Purdue. But they made almost $8 million. The conference does now. It doesn't go to the team. They split among the conference, and most of that money is used to improve the basketball program. So they're trying to convince the presidents of all the universities in this conference, hey, why don't you give St. Peter's a little more money? Because we did all the work. But that's not the way it works in a lot of these conferences. They split pretty much the money, but most of them they're putting aside to help fund the basketball program.
Okay, if you have time, just let me,
I'm fine. I'm good.
because these viewers who have been patient and were not able to join us. But from Ben, he says, but Deshaun had a legitimate reason to why he did what he did. This is about, I think, him sitting out and refusing.
Sitting out.
Okay.
The organization lies to him. They promised him he will be involved with decision making and then made decisions behind his back. Plus, the previous coach traded Deshaun's best receiver and offensive lineman. Watson was loyal for 4 years. He's not problematic.
I think that's probably the discussion which Dana referred to when they asked Deshaun, hey, what happened? Why did you sit out that year? And I think that's what the listener just said is probably what Deshaun Watson told Browns management. And Browns management probably looked at him and said, well, we won't do that to you, and go from there. I hope that Deshaun Watson has more leadership qualities and is far more mature than Baker Mayfield. If he is, I think this has a chance of working. If he isn't, I think Cleveland just made a gigantic mistake.
Well, I think, too, is when we heard Deshaun Watson was coming to Cleveland and he had his press conference, there was a lot of we were told there were a lot of players that text him or called him and says, welcome. Now, we don't know how many players that was, but that's a good sign. That players that you don't even know or haven't been teammates call you and say, hey, welcome, we're on your side and that sort of thing. We don't know how many players called him, but there were several. We were told players did call him.
Patrick, if you can hear me, we're waiting for you, but you need to unmute your mic so that we can then hear you. And if that's possible, please, we would love to hear from you. To what extent does being a billionaire play into this thing? Because the Haslams are billionaires, very, very, very rich people. in order to own an NFL football franchise team, you have to be a billionaire. So money is not a problem for them. I mean, people were taken aback by the $230 million contract, but I read where the Haslams are worth $12 billion, and this is peanuts for them. I mean, they don't see it. So is this becoming the new normal where billionaires own these teams and therefore are willing to pay whatever it takes to win?
Well, this is a first, as we've said. I've never seen a completely guaranteed contract in the National Football League, where if Deshaun Watson, God forbid, he gets hurt, he's getting paid every single dime because it's a completely guaranteed contract. If he throws 90 interceptions one year, God forbid he doesn't, he gets paid the entire salary. This entire salary is guaranteed. It is unheard of in the National Football League. If it works and Cleveland goes to the Super Bowl and they win a Super Bowl, the NFL's always been a copycat league. Does this become the new norm if it does work for the Cleveland Browns? I don't know.
This is the best time to be a sports agent.
Oh,
Because
no
you
question.
can take that contract, and guess what?
Look,
You know.
Bertram, I think it's a case of where Jimmy Haslam and the Haslam family want to puff their chest out. He was with the Steelers. He was a minority owner with the Steelers and saw them win 5-6 Super Bowls. He saw Cincinnati, under a second-year quarterback, go to the Super Bowl this year. He saw Lamar Hunt in Kansas City win a Super Bowl. He's seen the Glazier family in Tampa Bay win Super Bowls. Jimmy Haslam wants to win a Super Bowl, and with all the money he has, he's going to go to all extremes to make that happen, to try to make that happen. He wants to puff his chest out at these owners' meetings. Everybody in the Central Division, or I'm sorry, the AFC North,
AFC North, yeah.
has been to a Super Bowl. Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, Baltimore. Jimmy Haslam and the Cleveland Browns have been the only one. So I think he wants. I think it's a jealousy factor. I think he's jealous of these other owners, Jerry Jones.
Yeah.
You know, the Rams. I just think he's going to go to all extremes to try to win a Super Bowl. I mean, we saw it with the Indians in '95 when they got Hershiser and Dennis Martinez, and but went to the World Series but didn't win it. So I think Jimmy Haslam just wants to go out there and say, I'm going to do everything in my power to win a Super Bowl for himself and for the city of Cleveland, but for himself first.
And the fans are endearing toward Haslam. There's a lot of folks that will sit back and say, well, at least Haslam spends money, unlike the owner of the Cleveland Indians, who doesn't spend any money. Yet, over the last 9 years, the Indians have been in the playoffs 5 of the last 9 years, have gone to the World Series, something the Browns have never done in the history of their franchise. They've never gone to a Super Bowl. Now, the Super Bowl's only existed since 1967, but they've never gone to a Super Bowl. The Indians have gone to 3 World Series in my lifetime. I'm still waiting for the Browns to go to a Super Bowl. But there is a portion of the fan base that loves the fact that Haslam is spending money. Now, I don't know how many people are thrilled with the idea of giving a quarterback a completely guaranteed contract in a salary cap world, but if it works, he's going to be the toast of the town.
Plus, keep in mind, I don't want to make it sound like these owners are really smart, but TV revenue in the NFL, the money comes in. You could get one fan at every game and still make millions of dollars. There's so much money coming in the NFL, and they set up revenue sharing in the 1960s, which means they all share the revenue equally. So you could have a bad team and still make money. Unlike baseball, and the Indians are a great example, they can't. The market size is different because the regional sports networks is where the difference is at. The Yankees have $1 billion, the Angels have $1 billion, the Pirates probably have what, 20 million at the most, maybe. That's why baseball is unfair. But football, Green Bay could never have a baseball market. Because everyone shares the revenue, and it was a brilliant idea in the 60s when they had the merger. They established that. So you can really screw things up and still make a lot of money. These owners are bringing a lot of money.
Keep in mind, the NFL deals with 4 networks: NBC, ESPN, Fox, and CBS. And baseball, like Champ says, you're not. I mean, they have the Fox package, but that's that goes to everybody. but it doesn't include every game every day. You know, the NFL is on national or regional TV and I mean, look what ESPN did, paying Aikman and Joe Buck the amount of money they're paying.
Well, the only
And it's easy to do because the NFL is a once-a-week product.
That's
And that's the reason why
Right.
it's a completely different structured base television-wise than baseball is, because baseball's a 162-game schedule. You're playing 6 times a week, sometimes 7 times a week, and local teams are responsible for their local television contracts, and then the 30 teams are sharing the ESPN contract, the Fox contract, the MLB TV contract, the TBS contract in the postseason. So, but there's haves and have-nots in baseball because of the disparity of games. The National Football League, everyone is equal.
Yeah, I think the preseason games are the only ones where locally they make money.
Yes,
That's
yes,
it.
that's
Other
correct.
than that, it's all national. They have no
Right.
connection. It's all
And
national.
there are some preseason games nationally too, which is
Right.
part of the package.
Right.
Well, gentlemen, we've come to the end of what has been a fascinating discussion about the controversial hiring of Deshaun Watson as the Cleveland Browns quarterback. I want to thank my guests Dana Balash, Ron Potesta, and Tony Vibo. My thanks also to Robert McFerrin, our producer, and to Andy Kunkel, our technical director. Both Robert and Andy work for WFMJ. To our viewers, I apologize if you were trying to join us but could not. We are working on some new technology that we hope will be able to make it possible for you to join us and to participate. Please remember to click the subscribe and share buttons so we may continue this journey of exploration. I'm Bertram de Souza, wishing you a very pleasant evening.